All right, folks, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. And we're going to cut to the chase. Darren Wurz here is going to help a lot of lawyers that are listening to this program that are thinking about retirement or know it's down the block, or even if they want to practice for the rest of their life, but they know they got to start, getting it together and all that. So stop buying those boats and sinking all that money into repairing those boats. And Darren, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Greg. As we were talking before, I've got a little bit of a sniffle, but it's been allergy season this year, but I can't complain too much.
All right. Well, this would be the perfect time for you to complain. Uh, Darren also has his own. Darren is a financial planner, investment advisor, and focusing on attorneys as clients.
That's right, Greg. And not just any attorneys. I mean, I do work with a lot of attorneys, but really specifically, it's law firm owners. And I've really made that my specialty. I find that there's a lot of really unique challenges that law firm owners have. And they need a lot of help often, at least the ones that I work with. They're not your typical clients. They want you to dig down into the numbers, and they're busy people. They're busy running a business and being a practitioner at the same time, and they need someone they can work with really closely. And so I've really enjoyed working with law firm owners and making that the main focus of my practice.
And as you can see, Darren also hosts his own podcast, The Lawyer Millionaire, and has
Yeah,
has written a book also called, is it The Lawyer Millionaire?
it is. It's right here on the shelf behind me.
And I have it, and I promise you I'm going to be reading it this. I mean, I actually looked through the table of contents, which I do before I commit to reading anything, and excellent topics all across the board, especially for lawyers. Um,
Absolutely.
so
Thank you.
I mean, let's dig deep. Why do lawyers, listen, you're a professional, you're making all this money, like why do they even care? You know,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the problem. You're busy, you're making a good amount of money. What I find is that my clients, they need to get a handle on what's happening. Because they're so busy, money's going in their account, it's getting spent, and they've lost track of where it's going. And, it doesn't matter how much money you're making, at the end of the day, you need to make sure you're being strategic with it. And so clients come to me because um, they want to develop a really strategic plan. They want to make some really big, inspiring long-term goals. They've gotten to a place where their business is running really well. And they're like, okay, now it's time for me to really sit down and think about what's the kind of life that I want to create, and how do we sort of try and make that happen? So that's what we kind of work on. And, even really that's, you would think that maybe you don't need help, right? If you're making a lot of money.
yeah. And I mean,
But
go
yeah,
ahead.
really, it's the opposite. Now that you're making all this money, let's be strategic with it, and let's make a plan to really think about critically what is the life that you want to create. One of the things I do with my clients is we create a financial mission statement. We say, okay, what is all this for? And what are we doing all this for? And let's create some goals, some visionary statements to unify all this together and help us in our journey and know what direction we're going in.
All right. So, I mean, the sad thing is that I've been to lots of conferences with some really big name attorneys that have made all this money, and
Hmm.
then they have no money, and I'm like, what happened? And they they just don't get the concept of, proper financial planning. And it's
Mm.
so somebody calls you up. Why would they call you up? All right, I made a lot of money. I thought I had a lot more money. Maybe I don't have as much money. Am I going to run out of money? Like, why would they call you up? What's the reason for them to call you up? And let's go through the roadmap. Like,
Yeah.
what would you do with them? Are you just putting them in cryptocurrency and saying, hey, let's roll the dice? Or like, what's the platform, so to speak?
Yeah, well, usually they contact me because they're looking for someone that really understands law firm owners. And, law firm owners are not, like I say, your typical clients. They require a lot more help. And I do a lot more work for these clients because they really need someone who is going to pick apart their numbers, help them understand what's going on with their finances. And often their finances are complicated. And it's different from, if you work in big law, you work for big, one of the big law firms, you want to make partners someday, maybe the biggest financial challenges for you might be planning your your estimated tax payments and, some of your partnership responsibilities. But when you're a law firm owner, you have so much more to think about. And really the big thing is that the business is tied in with your personal finances. And so it's not just about, okay, how much money do I need to save so that I can retire one day? There's so many more questions we're asking, like, okay, what do you want to do with this practice? Do you want to sell this practice someday? What's your succession plan? Or is it about work-life balance? Do you want to just kind of fade into the background a little bit more and be able to continue owning and operating your firm, but maybe set it up so that it kind of runs itself? So really we're asking more than financial questions. It's, okay, what kind of life do you want to create? And, a lot of the clients I work with, they are probably most of the time in their 50s, late 40s or 50s. And they've gotten to a point where they've overcome some really big challenges. And it is not easy to build and grow a law practice, but they've done it. They've gotten to that place. Maybe their kids are growing up and, they feel like they're finally really hitting their stride. But like you said, they don't maybe have a lot to show for it because they've had to put in so much to get to this point, and so they're cash flow rich. They've got great cash flow, but they don't have the wealth. They don't have the personal wealth to speak for it. And so now they're starting to think about the future and starting to think about their kids and things like that. And sometimes, this is not always the case, but sometimes there is a spouse involved who is a little bit more prone to spending. And so sometimes we have to work through that. And so really it's about, okay, you've been making all this money, spending all this money and living large. That's a temptation that's easy to get into, as you're making more money. And then you don't have anything to show for it. So it's like, okay, now let's sit down. Let's think about, what is the mission here? Where do we want to go? And I think, financial planning, I don't like to do, I don't really like the word retirement because it doesn't motivate me. I don't think it motivates a lot of other people. But what is motivating? What is motivating is, okay, I want to have $5 million in net worth, and I want to have a vacation house in the Dominican Republic or in Mexico. Okay. And then I want to spend, a certain amount of time of the year there. Okay. Now we have a vision. Now we have something that's real specific. And so we'll start there. You asked about what the journey is. That's what we do. We start with, okay, let's be real specific about what is the kind of life you want to create. I was meeting with an attorney actually this week, a new client. And he was, it was our first meeting. We were talking about goals. And he was telling me all this financial stuff. He was telling me about what was going on with the business and what he wanted to do with the business and, different plans he had for trying to expand maybe into a new practice area. And I kept asking him, okay, what else? What else? What else? And finally, he mentioned the word financial independence. And I said, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Because I don't care. I mean, I care. I want to know your plans for the business, but that's not motivating. Okay, you're going to run your business, and then what? What's the purpose? What are you all here for? I feel like even I'd get this way as a business owner. We're just on the hamster wheel. We're running our businesses. We're making life happen, and then we forget to kind of sit back and say, okay, what is the purpose of all of this? Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Let's live our lives. Let's create a plan for the life that we want to have and live. And let's try to make that happen. Let's be specific and be strategic. And so we were finally able to really get into some specifics. He was talking about some hobbies that he wanted to pursue, some different really fun things he wanted to do with his spouse. I'm like, okay, now good. This is it. This is the meat of it. And this is what's going to inspire the plan. And, I had a client a couple of weeks ago. He said he wanted to accumulate $20 million in funds. That's what he wanted to do. That was his goal. I said, okay, what for? Money is never the goal, and money is usually not very inspiring, which is why people have a hard time saving. I'm going to have a hard time, putting money in an account to just put money in an account. You know what I mean? What really is more inspiring for people is, okay, this account I'm putting money in, this is for you mentioned boats, right? Okay, maybe I want to buy a boat. This is for my boat that I'm going to buy in retirement. That's why I'm putting money in that account. And that's what that's for. Okay, now I'm inspired and now I'm motivated. So, yeah, that's kind of where we begin. And it starts with that visioning process, being real specific about the life that you want to create.
All right, so I want to talk about the dreaded R word, retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yeah.
mentioned that, I mean, that basically you're there to help lawyers transition into retirement, but at the same time, not necessarily go into retirement. And just in my own little personal story is that my father is an attorney, and he's 92, and he still works full time, and he has zero plan to retire. I'm already like, okay, I guess we're gonna, talking to my sister, I'm like, I guess, when the one time he doesn't pick up the phone when we call, we might as well just go to his office, because that's probably where he's going to end up, at some point dying at. But I think that the two things that I consistently am hearing now, all right, we're all, presumably living longer, maybe a lot longer than we expected, and healthcare costs, long-term care, try getting a long-term care policy. I mean, I priced them out a couple of years ago. It just didn't work. The numbers didn't work or whatever. So it seems like people are not gearing themselves up to a full-time retirement because they're afraid that if they retire fully, their brain is going to go and they're going to just, there's months left to live. Like, work is going to keep them alive. But at the same time, the whole, when am I going to die? How am I, so some people go into retire. They don't go into retirement. They keep their practice alive, not necessarily to make money, but just to sort of keep themselves active. So I'm assuming that you are good helping people like that don't want to necessarily retire. Goodbye, see you later. I'm on my boat or whatever. I'm in my RV.
Most definitely. I mean, that is the beautiful thing, is you don't have to retire in the traditional sense. It's all about what do you want? You know what I mean? If you really love what you do, and maybe you want to keep practicing, but you only want to come into the office a couple days a week, maybe that's what you want to do. Or, maybe you want to work part-time, it can be whatever you want it to be. And the thing about it is, retirement, like I said, is not, people don't retire just to retire. If you retire and you don't have a plan for what you're going to do in retirement, you're doomed. I mean, you're going to be going back to work probably because you're going to be bored to tears.
Yeah. And then you're just annoying the hell out of everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So, more than retirement, let's think about what is your next phase in life. Let's think about what you wanted. And, my dad is still working in the business to some degree, but he is spending about half of his time down in Florida riding his motorcycles, and that's what he loves to do. So think about, when you think about your own retirement, you want to think about, what are the things that I'm really passionate about? What are the things I really enjoy doing that I want to do more of? And that becomes the basis for your retirement. Because if you're just going to retire and sit around, yeah, you're right. Your health is probably going to deteriorate because you need, a lot of work is often what keeps us active, what keeps our minds active, and things like that. You need something that's going to engage you and that you're going to be passionate about.
All right. So let's say I'm 67 years old, And I'm an attorney, and I've sort of gotten to that point where I'm like, I can't really make it happen completely. I don't want to make it happen completely, but I don't want to go completely, into full-time retirement and close the operation down. Do you assist people with that transition, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. Retirement is always possible. Um, it's just a matter of arranging your lifestyle the way it needs to be arranged. Um, if you're at that stage and you're concerned that you're not going to have enough money, maybe there's some adjustments to your lifestyle that you can make that can get you there. And no one really, people usually don't necessarily want to hear that, but I think it's good news. Maybe you have the opportunity to downsize. Maybe you've been living in a house that's really big because you had kids, and you don't need all that square footage anymore. Maybe you could downsize, and you could retain some assets that way and get some money that way to plug into your retirement assets. So sometimes really it's just about thinking creatively. How can we get creative here in a way that's going to get you what you want? And maybe that's not a full retirement, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you do have to continue to work in some fashion. Maybe that's part-time or something like that. So there might be, some compromises, some creativity that needs to be involved. But it's just a matter of exploring some of those options and seeing what you can do.
All right, so let's also talk about succession planning. You're an attorney, you have children that are in the industry, or maybe they're not. Maybe you've got relatives or friends. I mean, is that something that you also help attorneys to accomplish?
Absolutely. I talk about it with all of my clients. It is something that we talk about from day one, and try to encourage my clients to make that a plan. You want to be at least 5 years away from retirement to really start a succession plan. It is definitely possible. You can find an owner for your business. And there are so many objections. I've heard so many objections to it. My practice area isn't valuable, or my firm isn't big enough, or no one would want to buy it. Someone could want to buy it. I mean, there might be someone out there who does. You might be surprised. I mean, and it's becoming more and more popular. I just talked with Tom Lenfesty of the Law Practice Exchange, and he said that he has more people interested in buying law firms than he does have sellers.
Yeah.
That is just crazy to me. And one of the cool things, so, maybe it's not your traditional, I'm going to find some person who's going to buy my firm. Maybe you're going to merge with a growing firm and they're going to acquire you. These are all definitely possible things for you, but you want to make sure that you get an early start positioning your business the right way that it's going to be attractive to a buyer.
Yeah. And so can you help lawyers sell their business?
I don't help with the mechanics of selling it, but that's why I have really, really great connections in the industry. So I will connect you with someone who will help you walk through that succession process. But it is a big part of the financial plan. So the person that I connect you with, we're going to work hand in hand so that we can try to get you, the amount of money you need and the amount of money you expect. And then, I know enough to be dangerous
Yeah.
when it comes to business planning and marketing and that sort of thing. So, I will give you some general guidance around, here's what you may want to think about early on to set up your practice. Here are some things, some structures you can put in place. They're going to make your practice more valuable and more attractive to a potential buyer in the future.
Yeah. And that's key. I mean, I think anybody that's just like, oh my God, I got to sell my business. Oh my God, I got to retire. Oh my God, you can't do that. You got to call up Darren years in advance, even if you're not sure what you want to do.
Yeah.
Just to sort of get things set up and, and make the process smoother. I think, a lot of lawyers are just so like focused on the law, the clients, the cases, they, in the back of their mind, they've always wanted a boat or a small plane, and they get a big hit and they're just running off. And there's like no planning, no forward planning here. And I feel bad, when I see some of my colleagues or whatever struggling, especially in their 60s or whatever, when they really, like in my line of work, one of my lines of work got legislated out. And so in that particular space, we've had conferences since then, and I've seen my colleagues in that particular space, and they're thinking, they're now, they never expected it, and they're like, "Oh, now I don't know how to do anything else. I'm gonna have to retire." And it's just kind of a shame that they never really thought, maybe I should talk to, like, someone like Darren, and start to, like, I think people, lawyers even in their 30s and their 40s, should call you up and start to think like that, so that they don't get caught in oh my God, I made so much money, I don't have anything, and now I got to retire. It's
Well,
just,
absolutely. And the thing is, time just goes by so fast.
yeah,
You know, and I think that is part of the thing. You mentioned being busy, working on your cases, you're working with your clients, you're on the hamster wheel.
yeah,
And before you know it, you wake up and you're 60 years old and you're like, oh my goodness, retirement is going to be coming soon. So yeah, it's really you know, it's very common. And the message is that you want to try and be as proactive as possible and get that early start. It's never too late. If you haven't gotten started yet, today's the day.
today's the day. That's right. What about tax planning? Is that something in your genre, in your wheelhouse?
Big time, big time. Yeah. So I mentioned the clients I work with, they want something that's um, more personal. And for law firm owners, the way I work with my law firm owner clients is a very close, personal way of working. I'm kind of like their personal CFO, basically. And that's the level of service that they need. So I'm helping them with cash flow analysis. I'm helping them monitor their goals and evaluate their progress, and giving them recommendations throughout the year. And tax planning becomes a big part of that. As we go throughout the year, thinking about what we can do tax wise, with our retirement accounts, with our Roths and our traditional IRAs and 401ks and things like that. Yeah. So, typically with clients, we're in communication on a regular basis. We're having quarterly review meetings to review all of the financials, and tax planning becomes a big part of that. And then every year, I'm reviewing the client's tax returns, looking for opportunities to improve things. I don't actually do the tax preparation, but I usually work very closely with my client's bookkeeper and their CPA.
Yeah. And obviously, if you do have a big year, like, lawyers think, oh, I had a big year, they brought in a lot of money. I mean, I think that's the best time. And I think, to talk to someone like you, because, what do you do with it? You don't, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to pay taxes or whatever. What can I do with it? And there are a lot of creative things that people can do to actually enhance their business and avoid paying taxes at that particular time. And maybe you want to pay them, later when you're not making any money, and the rate, the tax rate would be lower for you.
And you want to think about, how can I set myself up for the dip that's coming?
Yeah.
Because that's the reality of the situation. That's one of the biggest struggle points for the law firm owner clients that I work with, is their income fluctuates. It's variable. And, things change in the industry. The law changes, and, you may wake up one day and, COVID taught us this when the courts were shut down.
Yeah.
Your income is risky at sometimes. And so we want to think about, how can we put things in place to even that cash flow out. You want to be retaining a certain amount of emergency reserves in your business and in your personal life. And then what can you do with that money? Don't just let that money sit idly in a bank account that's earning nothing.
Yeah.
There are high yield savings accounts for businesses. You could be putting it in, making 4 to 5%, and if it's really long-term strategic money, maybe you very carefully invest some of it in some really high quality bonds or something like that, maybe a very small amount of high quality stocks. That's okay. You can do that if your time horizon is long enough. But yeah, think that way. Think, how can I make some money on this money? And you want to think about um, ways you can try to even that cash flow out. And that's a really big challenge for a lot of my clients.
And so for the client, for the attorneys out there that have, a lot of money in their, corporate account, their business account, I think that a lot of them don't even realize that they can invest that money, and they just let it sit in the bank account, not even going with a high yield product. And they're like, really, you're allowed, that I learned that, maybe a decade ago, and I was stunned because I had money just sitting there, and somebody said, why are you just, why don't you put it in a CD or whatever? And I'm like, you can do that? I didn't even realize you could do that. But
and maybe, my dad did this during a lot of his career. He would put money in high yield bonds. It was money that he didn't need, and he would collect the dividends as income. And so all of a sudden he's got a secondary stream of income.
Yeah.
And you can do that under the right circumstances. If you don't need that principal, you're not concerned about that principal, that might be a nice way to supplement your income. So there are some things you can think about that way as well.
So is there any part of your services that lawyers, that I haven't touched on yet, that lawyers should know that you can help them out with?
Oh, I think one really, really big one would be the 401k structuring and the cash balance plan. So, there are some really, really cool things that you can do, especially if you're a law firm owner. If you have not set up a 401k yet, or even if you have one, you might not be using it to its full benefit, to its full maximum capability. The 401k is a really powerful tool, and we help law firm owners set those up so that they can really get the most use out of it. And then there's something called a cash balance plan, and not a lot of people know about this, but you can actually set up in addition to a 401k, a cash balance plan, which is a type of pension plan. Basically, it's a type of defined benefit plan. It is a little more tricky. It's a little more costly, but essentially you could put away, $100,000, $200,000 a year on a pre-tax basis using that kind of a plan. Doesn't work for all types of practice areas, and your income needs to be fairly steady, but that is a really, really savvy approach to tax minimization. And the other really cool thing is contingency fee deferrals. So, setting up, a structured fee arrangement where you can, if you get a really big settlement award, a really big settlement fee, instead of taking that all in 1 year and getting a huge tax hit, maybe trying to stretch that out. That's something you can do. And I find not a lot of people know about that.
Yeah. And, I mean, I know people would be like, oh no, I want it all now, but that's why you need to talk to someone like Darren, who can, your instincts are just not going to really lead you to the promised land. You need someone who knows what to do, because at the end of the day, it's a bottom line, issue. And you don't want that big payment that you got to go, getting blown out, and half of it goes to the IRS, the other half went to your boat, and then you're stuck, and you're like, wow, God, I remember I had that big case, and oh my God, I was so happy. And then it's like, you want to be able to reap these the reward for your big victories, your big payouts, in as good a way as possible. And we don't know, us lawyers, we're not trained how to run businesses. Some of us start law firms, we have absolutely no idea what we're doing, and we never do. And we just kind of run it, it's whatever, we got our trust account, and that's all we're concerned about, or whatever, aside from what we make. And I think that that's foolish. I think anybody that's listening to this, Darren, what is the best way to get in touch with you? I mean, I'm going to put all your information in the show notes, but somebody that's listening to this, driving around, whatever, what's the best?
The simplest way is just to go to thelawyermillionaire.com. You can type that in your browser, thelawyermillionaire.com. That'll take you to my webpage. I got all my information on there. You can book a meeting with me if you want to. All my contact information is there. The book, the podcast, it's all there for you.
All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. Darren Wurz, thank you for coming on and sharing your information. Hopefully we're going to help out some people, who are listening to the show. If you're listening to the show, I want to help you out. Darren wants to help you out. And you could go on to his show, the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast, and just go scroll down, find the episodes that you want. You might even see me on one of, right?
You will.
You will. And it was a pretty good episode. I don't know. I wouldn't say it was your best episode, but
it was good. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Darren. And that'll do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. Subscribe, rate, and review. Any questions? If you want me to bring him back, you can send me some questions. Go to my YouTube channel and you say, listen, bring that Darren guy back. He didn't even talk about whatever. How to make money on wine or something like that. All right, Darren, take care. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.